There's a bit of jerked moss pork wedged up behind my back left molar, and it has been there for 9 hours, and I would trade the entire war effort, every soul aboard, the captain's smug face most of all, for one clean toothpick. That's the log, that's the entry, sign it. No, I'm kidding. Petrak says I have to keep these proper now because the bridge lost the official feed during the Thren engagement, and somebody up there needs a paper trail so when the inquiry comes, and it's coming, it always comes, there's a low-deck rating to hang it on. Me. Riggs M. Engineer rating 3rd, 12 years in, never promoted, never will be. Because I told a fleet captain to his face that his coupling tolerances were garbage, and I was right, and being right is the fastest way to stay 3rd forever. So fine, I'll keep the log. But I'm keeping it my way. You want it pretty, you write it. Anyway, the pork, back left, won't move, tongue's raw from going at it. Every time I swallow it taps the nerve and my whole jaw lights up like a fault line. I have been at battle stations for 2 days running, and the thing in my teeth is winning the war I care most about. That's the frame for everything that follows. Remember it. The whole galaxy thinks the marrow not one at Vel's reach because of doctrine or courage or some ancient terrifying human thing. It was none of that. We won because we were too annoyed to do anything else. You want context. Inquiry boards always want context. Fine. The rule, the big one, the one every species in the Combine teaches its larvae before it teaches them to use a toilet. Do not enrage the humans. Not don't fight humans. Plenty of folk fight us. We're not even that strong, not by Combine numbers. Our ships are slow. Our shields are a joke. We run ablative carbon weave over a magdeflexion lattice, and the Thren have had real screens since before we had agriculture. Our jump cores are loud, dirty, half a generation behind. On paper, we lose every engagement. The rule isn't about strength. The rule is older than that. It comes from the Quiet War, which I won't explain because everyone knows it, and if you don't, you can read a Combine primer like a child. Short version. Somebody enraged us once, a long time ago, and the somebody is not a somebody anymore. Not conquered. Not enslaved. Just gone. Their homeworld's a navigation hazard now. A smear. Ships root around it not out of respect, but because the debris field never stopped spinning. So the Combine made the rule. Trade with humans, fine. Beat humans in a fair fight, sure, happens all the time. But do not make it personal. Do not take something they can't get back. Do not look a human in the eye and make them decide in that slow, stubborn animal way they decide things that you specifically have to stop existing. Because humans don't have a fear reflex that works right. We have an annoyance reflex that works too well. And the line between the two in a human is real thin. The Thren forgot the rule. Or no, that's generous. The Thren didn't forget. Forgetting I could forgive. The Thren decided the rule was superstition. They had a whole new doctrine about it. Younger generals. Fresh degrees from the War College on Thren that floats. Papers, models, projections. They ran the numbers, and the numbers said humans were a manageable problem if you hit fast and didn't give the annoyance time to compound. I have read those papers. We pulled them off a captured tender. They're very smart, lot of math. The math was right about everything, except the part where it mattered. The captain. I have to write about the captain because the captain is why this log exists, and the captain is who the inquiry wants, and I will be honest, bored. I would love to hand them to you. I would love it. Captain Soria Idris Vale. Fleet Captain Maronot. 2 decades senior to me, half a head shorter, talks slow, blinks slow, has never once in my hearing raised her voice. Everybody loves her. The galley loves her. The pilots love her. The Thren prisoners, last I checked, love her, which is its own kind of obscene. I do not love her. I'll tell you exactly when it started. Cycle 2980-something. We were doing a turnaround at Bellow Station and number 3 jump core through a flux harmonic. That's a bad one. That's the kind that walks up the spine of the core, and if you don't catch it, you get a containment cascade. which is a fancy way of saying everyone forward of the engine room becomes a memory. I caught it, me. Riggs, I was elbow-deep in the secondary phase, manifold with a torque wand and a flashlight in my teeth for 14 straight hours, and I caught it, and I rerouted the harmonic into the dump capacitors, and I saved the entire forward third of the ship. And the after-action report said the core, self-corrected within tolerance. Self-corrected, within tolerance. I wrote 4 pages on what actually happened. The captain read all 4 pages. I watched her read them. She nodded slow the way she does. And then she filed it under nominal and bought me a coffee. A coffee. So no, I do not love the captain. The captain is a black hole with a nice voice. Everything good that happens near her gets pulled in and comes out the other side wearing her name. And the thing that kills me, the thing that has kept me a third-rate engineer rating for 12 years is that she's good at her job. It would be so much easier if she were bad. I could hate a bad captain clean. Hold on, tongue, molar. The pork shifted and now it's worse, it's deeper. I think I drove it in. I'm going to have to live with this through the whole inquiry, aren't I? Where was I? The Thren Vels Reach, the rule. Okay, the thing that started it, the thing the Thren did. We were not even a warship that day. Officially. The Marrow-Knot is a long-haul logistics cruiser with teeth bolted on after the fact, which means we haul beans and bolts, and we have exactly enough armament to make a pirate reconsider but not enough to make a fleet worry. We were running the Vels Reach corridor, which is a milk run, a nothing route, 3 colony rocks and a fuel depot, and a way station full of people who chose to live at the absolute hind end of human space because they like the quiet. One of those rocks is called Sefton's Hope. Population 11,000, mostly agri-domes and aquifer farms. They make a fermented thing out of moss pork that everybody at the depot pretends to hate and secretly hoards. The very same moss pork currently lodged in my molar. There's a joke in there about the planet getting its revenge, but I'm too tired to find it. Sefton's Hope is not strategic, it's not rich, it does not matter to anyone. The Thren hit it anyway. Not a raid, not a skirmish. They hit it as a demonstration. It's in their own doctrine papers, the ones we captured. They have a word for it, a planned, surgical, total removal of a soft human target. Specifically chosen because it was meaningless, to prove to their own war college that the ancient rule was superstition. To prove that you could take something a human cared about and not trigger the thing. That the annoyance reflex was a myth in humans, when you took their stuff, just grieved like everybody else and moved on. They wanted a control group, a clean experiment. They picked Sefton's Hope because losing it shouldn't matter to anyone with sense. They did not account for the fact that the Marrow-Knot was 4 hours out, and the Marrow-Knot had a galley chief named Ardo whose mother lived in Agridome 6, and the Marrow-Knot had 210 human crew who all, every single one, ate moss pork 3 times a week and complained about it and would have died before admitting they'd miss it. They picked the one meaningless rock that happened to be our meaningless rock. That's the part the smart Thren papers couldn't model. There's no such thing as a meaningless rock. There's just rocks nobody's annoyed about yet. I was in the engine room when the distress relay came through. Of course I was. Where else? It came in fragmented. Sefton's Hope comms array was already slagged by then. Just carrier ghosts and one looping automated mayday, and underneath it, faint, a kid's voice. Open channel. Some kid in a shelter holding down a transmit key, probably without even knowing the array was gone, just talking, the way you talk when you're scared and there's a microphone. We only got 9 seconds of the kid before the loop ate it. I'm not going to write what the kid said. I've decided. It's the one thing in this whole log I'm keeping. The board can subpoena my actual brain if they want it. But I'll tell you what it did. I was at the main console with a coffee going cold and a fault light I was ignoring, and I heard those 9 seconds come over the engine room squawk. The bridge had patched it to all stations. I don't know why, maybe by accident. Maybe Idris Vale did it on purpose. She does things on purpose that look like accidents. And I felt the thing. The thing, the annoyance reflex, the one the Thren said was a myth. It's not rage. That's where their math went wrong. They modeled it as rage, and rage has a curve. Rage spikes and rage burns out. Rage you can wait out. You can absorb a rage and let it cool and then negotiate. Their whole doctrine was built on absorbing the spike. It's not a spike. It's a floor. Something drops and it doesn't come back up. It's the feeling when you've been awake too long and someone breaks the one thing you were keeping nice and you go very, very quiet and very, very practical. It's not hot. It's cold and it's patient and it does arithmetic. I felt it. Whole engine room felt it. Big Hollies put down his spanner. Devora stopped chewing her stim gum. Nobody said anything. Then the all-hands chimed and the captain's slow voice came on and she said, I'm quoting, "This is exact. This is for the record." She said, "All stations, we're going to go have a look." A look. And I hated her bored. In that second I hated her more than I ever had, because that was the most human sentence I have ever heard, and she said it like she was suggesting we check the weather. And I knew that whatever happened next, the report would say responded to distress signal in accordance with charter. And the thing that was actually happening, the thing in all our chests, the cold, patient floor of it, would never make it into a single official word. So here it is, unofficial, in my words. We did not respond in accordance with charter. We went to go ruin somebody's whole existence about it. 4 hours to Vale's reach. I want you to understand what 4 hours does. If we jumped in hot off the relay, fresh, blood up, that's the spike. That's what the Thren wanted. Hit a target, let the cavalry come screaming and furious and sloppy, absorb the screaming, win clean, write the paper. Their whole timing was built around a furious, sloppy human cavalry. They did not get a furious, sloppy cavalry. They got 4 hours of a logistics crew that does not even like each other, packed into a slow, ugly ship, sitting in acceleration cradles with nothing to do but think, getting more annoyed by the minute, in a cold, quiet way, like a debt accruing interest. 4 hours. I want to walk you through what I did in mine, because it matters, because it's the actual mechanism the Thren couldn't model. I went to work on the guns. We have 3 spinal mass drivers, call them rail spikes, and they are old and they are out of spec, and number 2 has a feed jam tolerance that means it'll cook off if you push the cycle rate past 0.8, and Fleet has told me twice in writing not to modify it. I modified it. In hour 1. I pulled the governor chip, physically, with pliers. I have it in my pocket right now. And I rewired the thermal cutout to lie to the fire control system about how hot the barrel was running, so that number 2 would keep firing through the temperature where it's supposed to shut down to protect itself. That's insane. That is a court-martial. I documented it badly on purpose. If the inquiry wants to know why number 2 rail spike fired 40% over its rated cycle and didn't blow up, the answer is it absolutely should have blown up, and I was monitoring the barrel harmonic by hand the entire engagement with a contact mic pressed to the housing and a manual scram trigger in my fist. And if I'd heard the harmonic go wrong, I'd have killed it in under a second, and we'd all have died slightly later instead of slightly sooner. That's the human thing. That's the whole human thing right there, and I want it on the record because the captain will never say it. It's not that we're brave. I'm not brave. I'm tired and I have meat in my teeth and my legs asleep. It's that when the floor drops, a human will break their own equipment to win. We'll exceed our own tolerances. We'll lie to our own safety systems. We'll take the governor off the thing that's protecting us because the thing that's protecting us is also the thing slowing us down, and slowing down is not on the menu anymore. The Thren build their whole civilization around tolerances. Stay within the screen rating. Stay within the doctrine envelope. Stay within the projected loss curve. It's smart. It's how you survive a galaxy. It's how you build a war college and write papers. And it means when a human pulls the governor chip, They have no model for what you do next, because nothing in their universe is supposed to operate past its own rating on purpose. Holly spent his 4 hours sharpening boarding spikes he wasn't authorized to have. Devora spent hers retuning the point defense to a fire pattern that the manual specifically calls unsafe for crude combat. The galley chief, Ardo, the one whose mother, Ardo, spent his 4 hours in the galley, cooking, because 210 people were going to come off this engagement starving, and somebody had to feed them, and that somebody was him, and he was going to do his job through the whole apocalypse, and the smell of it came up through the ventilation the entire fight. This absurd warm smell of mossbork stew threading through the smoke and the coolant haze. And I am telling you, board, that smell did more to that crew than any speech. The captain didn't give a speech. I keep waiting in my memory for the speech and there isn't one. She just let the smell happen. Let the 4 hours happen. Let us all sit in the cold, quiet floor of it in a crew. I think now she knew exactly what she was doing. I still hate her, but it's gotten complicated. L's reach. The engagement. I'm going to do this in order and I'm going to do it ugly because pretty would be lying. We came out of jump slow. That's the thing nobody believes. We didn't come screaming. We limped in off axis, jump core knocking, looking exactly like what we are. A beat-up logistics tub 4 hours late to a massacre. The Thren screen elements, 3 of them, real warships, Voral class, the kind with the layered screens we can't punch through on paper. They saw us come out, and I have the intercept comms logged. We pulled them later, and I want to read you the Thren Squadron lead's actual transmission to his command, because it is the funniest thing I have ever read and the saddest. He said, translated, logistics vessel, non-threat profile arriving post-action. Recommend we permit observation. Demonstration effect requires a witness. A witness? They let us live to watch. That was the plan. Let the cavalry arrive too late, let them see the dead rock, let them grieve and root around it and go home and tell everyone the rule is a myth. We were supposed to be the witness that proved humans break instead of bite. The captain opened a channel back, voice slow. I was on the engine room squawk. She said exact for the record. Acknowledged, we're going to observe. And then she did not observe. Here's how the math was supposed to go, by the Thren's own captured doctrine. 3 Voral. Layered screens, call it 9 deflection bands each. To kill a Voral you have to strip the bands faster than they regenerate, and a human ship our size strips maybe 1 band per rail spike cycle at safe rates, and they regen 1 band every 2 cycles, so the math is you cannot ever win. The screen outpaces you. You'd run out of coil charge and barrel life long before you got through. That's not pessimism. That's just the equation. 3 Voral versus 1 logistics tub is not a fight. It's the witness watching. The equation assumes safe rates. I had pulled the governor chip. When the captain said we're going to observe, she dumped full coil charge to all 3 rail spikes at once and brought number 2, my number 2, the one lying to itself about its temperature, up to a cycle rate of 1.4, not 0.8, 1.4. It started stripping bands faster than the Voral could regen because it was firing at a rate that is, by every manual ever printed, suicide. And it didn't blow because I had my hand on the housing feeling the harmonic and my thumb on the scram, and I was, for those minutes, part of the gun. I want that in the record. Riggs, engineer rating 3rd, was for approximately 6 minutes a component of fire control, a piece of meat wired into a weapon that should not have been firing, monitoring it by touch because the instruments were lying on my orders. That's not in any doctrine. There's no Thren paper that models a crewman becomes the safety system because he removed the safety system on purpose. First Voral lost its bands in under a minute. You could hear the engine room change. Not cheering, we didn't cheer. It was that cold floor satisfied doing arithmetic. Holly's just said flat 1, like a man counting reps. The Thren lead's comms logged. I have them, went from calm to a thing their translation matrix rendered as non-conforming engagement profile. Non-conforming engagement profile, which I think is thread for this, is not in the paper. It was not in the paper. We were the part that's never in the paper. They rallied. Of course they rallied. They're not stupid. They're the opposite of stupid. That's the whole tragedy. The two remaining Voral did exactly the right thing by their doctrine. They broke off the demonstration, abandoned the soft target, and turned to neutralize the anomaly. That's us. We were the anomaly now. Hit us with everything, end the embarrassment, salvage the paper. And they hurt us. I want to be clear because the pretty version of this story leaves it out. They hurt us bad. We took a band lance through the dorsal section that vented 3 compartments, and I lost 2 people I knew. Petrak's cousin was one. Atmospheric containment failed in Section 9 and they were just gone. And I'm not going to make that into a metaphor. They were alive and then there was a hole and then they weren't. That's all it is. That's all it ever is, and we lost number 3 rail spike entirely. Coil burnout, slagged, and number 1 jammed on a feed fault I couldn't clear in time. So now it's 2 Voral, mostly fine, against 1 tub with 1 working gun. Number 2, the liar. And here's where the Thren doctrine made its last and worst mistake. And here's where I finally understand the captain. And here's the part I hate writing, because it means I was wrong about her for 12 years. The math at that point said break off, for us. By our doctrine, by fleet doctrine, by every sane equation, the marrow knot should have jumped out. 1 gun, hull breached, 2 enemy capital ships intact, casualties mounting. Every fleet captain alive jumps out there and writes a report and gets a medal for preserving the asset. That's the safe rate. That's our governor chip. The captain pulled it. She came on the all-hands, slow voice, never raised. I'd give anything to be able to say she screamed, but she didn't, and she said, "Riggs, can number 2 take more?" Me by name. 12 years and she'd never used my name on the all-hands. Riggs. And I had my hand on the housing and the harmonic was singing, bored. It was past singing. It was into the range where the manual doesn't have words. It was at the edge where 1 more push cooks the barrel and kills the gun and probably the gun crew and probably me. The safe answer, the true answer, the answer with 12 years of being right behind it was no. No, it cannot. We are done. Jump us out. I looked at the harmonic. I looked at my thumb on the scram. I thought about the 9 seconds of the kid I'm not going to write down. I thought about Ardo's stew still threading through the smoke because he had not stopped cooking, that lunatic. He was feeding the wounded during the breach. And I thought about the mossbork in my own teeth. This stupid, persistent, miserable thing that has been with me through the entire end of the world. This little piece of Sefton's hope, lodged in my skull, that the Thren thought was meaningless. And the floor dropped 1 more notch, cold, patient, doing the arithmetic. I said, yeah, she can take more. She couldn't. I knew she couldn't. I was lying to fire control exactly like the thermal cutout I'd rigged to lie to fire control. I'd become the lie. I was the governor chip in my own pocket. I said she could take more because the alternative was leaving, and leaving was not on the menu. Because somebody had taken our meaningless rock and made it personal, and the cold floor of a human will burn out its own equipment, its own ship, its own self, before it lets that stand. That's the reflex, that's the actual thing, not rage, spite with a maintenance schedule. We pushed number 2 to 1.9. It did not blow up. I still don't fully know why. I have theories about the dump capacitors and the way the breech venting actually cooled the dorsal coil run by exposing it to vacuum. There's a real engineering answer, and someday when my hands stop shaking I'll write it properly. But the honest answer is it should have blown up and it didn't. And I was on the scram the whole time. And we got 11 cycles out of a gun rated for 0 cycles at that load. And 11 cycles was enough. Second Voral came apart on cycle 7. The third one ran. That's the part I need the board to hear. It ran. A Voral, a real warship, screens intact, weapons hot, more than capable of finishing a 1-gun logistics tub. It broke off and it ran, and its final logged transmission to Thren Command, which we pulled off the way station relay later, translated as: "Rule confirmed. Rule confirmed. Disengaging. The rule is confirmed." They didn't even call it a defeat. There's no word in the report for "we lost." There's just "the rule is real." The thing their war college said was superstition. The thing the smart young generals modeled away. A surviving Thren captain, looking at the wreck of his squadron and the smear that used to be a demonstration, transmitted to his command the single most accurate after-action report in the history of that war. The old people were right. Do not enrage the humans. Not because we're strong. We're not. We limped in late in a beans and bolts tub with 3 out-of-spec guns, and we lost most of them, and we lost good people, and we won with 1 gun firing at twice the rate that kills it, monitored by hand, by a tired engineer rating with food in his teeth. Because the captain asked could it take more, and the honest answer was no, and the human answer was yeah. They modeled our strength, they modeled our rage, they modeled our grief. They did not model that we'll break the thing protecting us to get at the thing that annoyed us. There's no equation for the governor chip in my pocket. There's no projection that includes a man becoming a component of a weapon he sabotaged. Their math was perfect, and their math was about a species that exists somewhere else. Not us, never us. We don't operate within tolerance. Tolerance is for people who plan to come home. So that's the engagement. That's what happened to the official feed the bridge lost. Now you have mine. Ugly, out of order, full of things I'll be court-martialed for. The governor chip is real. It's in my pocket. Number 2 rail spike is slag now. It gave out on the post-engagement diagnostic, finally blew on a zero-load test, like it had been holding itself together out of spite, and the second it didn't need to, it quit. I understand that gun. I have never understood anything better. We went back to Sefton's Hope after. There were survivors, not many. The kid, the 9 seconds, I'm not going to tell you if the kid made it. That's mine. But I'll tell you the last thing. The thing that finally broke 12 years of me hatting the captain. And then I'm done. The board can do what it wants. After, when the marrow knot was venting smoke and we were counting the dead, and Ardo was somehow still ladling stew with a burn dressing up one arm, Captain Idrisvale came down to the engine room. Came down herself. Slow walk, slow blink. Looked at the slagged gun. Looked at the contact mic still taped to the housing. Looked at me, standing there with my thumb still curled around a scram trigger that wasn't connected to anything anymore because I couldn't make my hand let go. And she didn't say good work. She didn't say hero. She didn't give a speech. There's no speech, I keep telling you, there's never a speech. She reached into her coat, and she handed me a toothpick. A toothpick. She'd carried it down 4 decks. She knew. Somehow, through the entire battle, through the breach and the dead and the gun that shouldn't have fired, she had clocked that her engineer rating third had a piece of mossbork stuck in his back left molar and was being driven slowly insane by it. And she came down through a wrecked ship to hand it to me before she said one single word. I got the pork out. 9 hours of it gone in 2 seconds. And then she said slow, quiet, exact, for the record, the only words that have ever mattered to me out of her mouth. She could take more, good call. And she filed everything else under nominal and bought me a coffee. I still hate her, bored. But I'd pull the governor chip again. For her, for the gun, for the rock that wasn't meaningless, for the kid. For 210 people who don't even like each other, and a galley chief who never stopped cooking, and a stupid piece of meat in my teeth that turned out to be the whole point. Do not enrage the humans. It's not a warning about our strength. It's a warning that we'll ruin ourselves to ruin you, slowly, on purpose, fully within nominal, with a toothpick in our pocket for after. Sign it Riggs, M. Engineer rating third, still third. Wouldn't have it any other way.